Welcome everyone to our webinar. My name is Ankur Patel, Director of Advancement for Hindu University of America. And today's webinar is Hindu Musical Traditions, a Cultural Immersion featuring Dr. Kanix Warren, a great friend of HUA. And you may know, Hindu musical traditions, also called Shastriya Sangeet. I put that in the subtitle line for the webinars, are ancient and diverse, but they have a common foundation based on Raga and Tala, and that's rooted in a unique spiritual cosmology. The deeper you dig, you see how interconnected it is. And in this webinar, Dr. Kanix Warren is going to introduce theoretical foundations of the world of Ragas and Talas, set up the framework for a deeper cultural immersion involving hopefully a little bit of at least guided listening today. And we're going to introduce the course that's coming up in the winter quarter. We'll get you answer your questions, fill you in on the details of that. And now let me give our special guest, Dr. Kanix Warren, an introduction. So you may know him because he's internationally known. He's a musician, a composer, a music educator, a scholar, several recordings. He's done some wonderful works recently that we've been happy to share through our newsletters and our buzz at Hindu University of America on the Yog Darshan. That was a beautiful one. I was sharing a little bit of a different performance he had organized earlier. Large scale musical productions, and he's got scores to his credit. Now, Kanixji is known primarily for his pioneering work in Indian American choral and orchestral music based on ragas. And through this work, he's built a diverse coalition and audience, amateur and professional musicians, ensembles, academic institutions like Hindu University of America, dance companies, and more. He's collaborated with artists and done so much work, but without further ado, let me hand it off to Kanixji for this webinar. And thank you for guiding us through this cultural immersion.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Ankur. Thanks so much. And namaste to all. Hope you can see me, hear me clearly. My name is Kanikeswaran. I'm based in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Ankurji, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon here, Eastern time. I'm aware that there's people from many different time zones here around the world. So I was wondering how to give an introduction to Indian music itself. So I've done this before. I've done it in so many different ways. And this time I thought I would do it differently using basically I'll give you a few vignettes or short stories, which are these stories are short and crisp and are great from the standpoint of understanding certain elements of Indian music. And then when you look at all of them together, you really see that they are at they have happened at different points in history, and they've all had some kind of a basis for what Indian music is today. First of all, I'd like to use the word Shastriya Sangeet because Hindu music is based on a well-refined set of Shastras. That basically Gandharva Ved is what we use to refer to Indian music traditions. Music is accorded a very exalted place in our the dharmic way of life. It's even considered to be a means to spiritual liberation. So there's a shloka which goes Veena Vadana Tatvajnaha Shruti Jati Visharadaha Talajnaha Cha Aprayasena Moksha Margam Niyaschati. So what it means is, let me sing it out for you. Veena Vadana Tatvajnaha Shruti Jati Visharadaha Talajnascha Prayasena Moksha Margam Niyaschati. So such is the nature of music that if you are skilled in the art of playing the veena, in the art of distinguishing between the very fine shrutis, and what do I mean by that? When you look at sound as a continuum, you reach a level of refinement with your ear that you are actually able to identify the fine distinctions between various swaras and various positions in that continuum. And talanyaha, one who's skilled in the art of keeping time. Again, time is cyclical in the Indian tradition, and timekeeping is cyclical in the Shastriya music tradition. When you're with a combination of all this, this you are definitely assured moksha. And how do I experience it? When I'm in that state of musical ecstasy, when I am completely lost, if it wouldn't matter if where I was or what I was doing, time would stop for me. So we will study more about this when we actually get immersed into the course. But I wanted to start out with this introduction and welcome you all to this, let's say, about 45-minute journey that we will take through various vignettes of Indian art music. So with that, let me start my presentation. And if you have any questions, keep typing them into the Q&A box or the chat window, however you want to do it, and then we'll address them at different points in time. So we will take tangible breaks for questions. And then also during those breaks, Ankurji will continue to introduce the course, and then we will move on. So here we go. Hope we can see my screen now. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. So like I said, I'm going to introduce a set of stories to you. The first one I want to start with is, here's a picture of a person that we refer to as Saint Tyagaraja. Of course, there's no need to use the word saint. This is Nada Yogi. So let's just call him Nada Yogi Tyagaraja. He was, in the Western sense, he was a composer, but in the Indian, in our Bharatiya terminology, we will use the word Vaggeyakara. A Vaggeyakara is one who is a term that refers to somebody that creates the Vak and the Sangeet, the Gayam, at the singing part of it at the same time. Or in very simplistic terms, a Vaggeyakara is a songwriter, but it's much more than a songwriter. A Vaggeyakara is skilled in music theory, is skilled in language, it's skilled in more than one language, it's skilled in, it has a good awareness of philosophy and the subject matter, and there's a lot more it takes before one is qualified to build upon the native talent and then actually create solid works which last a period of time. So I'm going to sing a short passage from what he has created and then explain the significance of that. And you will see how different parts of India connect together when you just listen to that. Give me just a second, I'll get a Shruti going. And by the way, what I mean by Shruti is that for those that are familiar with Indian Shastriya Sangeet, you would know that there is a sound that goes on in the background, which we refer to as a Shruti. The word Shruti simply means that which is heard. And this is something that's heard throughout the duration of a concert. And this is what is perceived by the ear. And this is what is, and you need this. To be able to sing, because this is what anchors you to the music itself. That's a framework of reference. So having said that, let me play. Of course, I play my Shruti from YouTube, and YouTube always throws in a couple of ads when the Shruti begins, sometimes even in the middle, which is kind of distracting. But anyway, of late they have increased the number of ads. I think it's a COVID special that we do. And they're getting pretty long too. Okay, here's a Shruti. Okay, so here's a specific line from Vaggeyakara Nada Yogi Tyagaraja, which goes, Sadyo Jatadi Panchavatraja, Sadyo Jatadi Panchavatraja, Sarigama Padani Varasapta Swara Vidyalolam. Let me sing it again. Sadyo Jatadi Panchavatraja Sarigama Padani Varasapta Swara Vidya Alolam. So what this means is Sadyo Jata, that is the first of the 5 faces of Shiva. Panchavaktra, the 5 faces. That which is born from the 5 faces. What was born from the 5 faces? Sa, Ri, Ga, Ma, Pa, Dha, Ni, the Saptaswara. So, Shiva is described by Bhagiyakara Tyagaraja as one who delights in the knowledge of the 7 swaras, Sarigama Padhani, which were born from his own 5 faces, starting with Sadyojata. So, this is a Kriti that was created more than 225 years ago. And here's a representation of Shiva. I'm sure many of you recognize this image. It's an iconic one from an archaeological site called the Elephanta Caves, which are located in an island near Mumbai. This is very old. This is a very old cave, and the sculpture probably goes back to like the 5th century or sometime around that. Now, what you see here is a 3-faced image in bas relief on the wall, actually carved in relief on the wall. And the faces each of the faces looks different, and people commonly refer to it as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, but actually it's not so. It's called Trimurti Sadashiva. Trimurti Sadashiva. So these are the 3 visible faces, but 2 faces are considered to be invisible. So together they constitute the 5 faces: Sadhyo, Jata, Vamadeva, Ishana, Aghora, and Tatpurusha. And it is the Shastras, the Sangita Shastra says that there are 7 swaras that we deal with in classical music, and the Sa and the Pa are considered to be fixed. But the other 5 swaras are said to have emanated from the 5 faces of Shiva. So this is the first story I wanted to share. The second one, I'm going to sing the song, and it looks pretty rainy here in Cincinnati. I don't know how the weather is in other parts of the world, but Bijri chamke barse meharwa आई बदरिया बिजुली चमके बरसे मेहरवा घरज घरज मोरे अथ ही ढरावे गरज घरज मोरे मोहे अत ही ढरावे घन गरजे घन बिजुरी चमके घन गरजे घन बिजुरी चमके पपिहा पिहू की खैर सुनावे कहाँ करूं कित जाऊं मोरा जियरा तरसे बिजुरी चमके बरसे मेहरवा. What I sang is the composition is a bandish, which is based on the theme of rain. Okay, so it's in a raga. It's an Indian raga, Indian classical raga called Miya Ki Malhar. The word Malhar is that it refers to that which cleanses. Mala hara. So mal is dirt, and malhar is to that which cleanses dirt, and which can clean. What can clean better than the waters of the monsoons, of the rains? So the raga itself is usually sung during the monsoon season, and there's a slight variation. This raga has been around for a long time, but a variation of this was created by a musician that lived about 400 years ago, who is associated with a lot of stuff that we take for granted in Hindustani music today. What is Hindustani music? We will see that in just a little bit. But as you can see, the words here are all based on the theme of rain. The raga itself is about rain. And the person that's associated with this is, anybody recognize this? This is the tomb in which he is buried. This is a place called this is in Gwalior in central India, and this is where Tansen, Mia Tansen, lies buried. And Mia Tansen was a musician in the court of King Akbar, and he was such a gifted musician that he could even move the elements. And there are stories about his learning music from his guru Swami Haridas, and stories of King Akbar going with him to hear Swami Haridas sing, only to realize that as even while the song was going on, which really moved the animals and birds around, the singer himself disappeared into nothingness. And this is one of the miracles that Akbar is said to have witnessed. And these are all part of the folklore that comes down the tradition of Hindustani music. So now the story goes that the court musicians in the court of Akbar were jealous of Tansen for his ability to do whatever he wanted with music. He was a skilled musician, and there was not a raga that he could not sing, and music literally obeyed his commands. So they wanted to play a trick on him, and a fatal trick on him, actually. So what they did was they told the emperor that Tansen, nobody could sing a raga called Deepak like Tansen could. Okay, so the word Deepak refers to lamps. Okay, so Deepak is a raga that's traditionally known to generate intense heat in the system, in the body, and elsewhere too. So their theory was that so passionate would be the rendition of Tansen of this raga that the force of the raga, the power of the elements, would actually make him spontaneously self-combust and just destroy himself. And that way the court would be rid of him, and they could have their field time, because nobody was able to even get near Tansen or his musicality or his musicianship. So the king listens to the courtiers and tells Tansen, okay, please sing Deepak, Raga Deepak for me. We will arrange a special recital in the court. Now Tansen immediately knows that something is wrong, and that he knows that he would die if he sings this raga. So he goes home distraught, and he has two daughters. The two daughters look at the forlorn father and ask him what's going on. Then he explains his predicament. And the daughters say, hey, we have a solution for you. Why don't you teach us the raga Malhar, and we will sing it in a powerful way together to invoke the rains, so that once the rains come, they'll be able to counter the power of the fire that you're kindling within yourself. So done deal. So Tansen teaches Mia his raga, his interpretation of the raga Malhar, which is called Mia Ki Malhar, in his honor, to his daughters. The appointed day arrives, and then Tansen starts singing Deepak in the court of the king, and all lamps start burning. This intense heat that is generated. The palace itself is roiling in the heat, and Tansen gets a fever. He cannot stop singing, and suddenly clouds come from nowhere, and the whole court is witness to the beautiful voices of Tansen's daughters that are bringing alive the spirit of the raga Mia Ki Malhar. There's a major downpour of rains, and then Tansen is saved, thanks to the grace of the power of the raga Mia Ki Malhar. So ever since then, this raga is associated with him. And you also always hear, there's a lot of songs and movies that are based on this raga. So one approximation of this raga in a movie song would be from the well-known film Goody, in which this was an Amitabh Jaya Bhadri star. No, Jaya Bhadri star a long time back. I think Amitabh plays guest role. And Vasant Desai is the one who scored the music on this film. The song goes, Bole re papi hara, bole re papi hara. So that's one story that relates the elements with ragas in the world of Shastriya Sangeet. And this is from the Northern Indian tradition. What do we have in the Southern Indian tradition? There's a raga called Amrita Varshini. So we all know the prayer. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. Then the third one is mrityor ma amritam gamaya. So generally, having read the Amar Chitrakatha comics and others, we generally tend to think that that amritam is like a liquid that you just drink. It's like a celestial nectar or something like that. But actually, the word amrita refers just to the opposite of mrityu. Amrit is immortality, basically. And without water, there's no life, right? And yes, I think day before yesterday is I think Water Awareness Day or Water Waste Awareness Day or something like that, where it is a day that is meant to remind us that, hey, water cannot be taken for granted. Wars will probably be fought on the basis of water. Only 0.5% of the water that's available on Earth is even fit for drinking, and that's not enough for the entire population, which is, by the way, growing. So the importance of the elements is an integral part of dharmic thought, and the arts don't stay away from it. They are well into it also. So there is actually a raga called Amrita Varshini. Varsha means rains. And so Amrita Varshini is a raga that's actually capable of bringing down the rains. So it's not a raga that's associated with the rainy season or the monsoon season, just like the Malhar group of ragas, but it's actually a raga which is part of the tantric, literally the tantric tradition that Dikshitar followed. That so this was Vageyakara. His name is Muthuswami Dikshitar. So he was a Dikshit, right? When we say Dikshit, the first name that we would probably know today would be Madhuri Dikshit, and then probably Sheila Dikshit after that. But Muthuswami Dikshitar was a Vageyakara who lived about 200 years ago, more than 200 years ago, and he is associated with literally creating a raga for the composition for the first time in the raga Amrita Varshini. And the story goes that he was traveling on bullock cart to the southernmost part of India. So while he lived in southern India, he was born in the delta of the river Kaveri. Then he spent a part of his life in Banaras, and then he traveled quite a bit, and finally he went to the southernmost part of India, close to Kanyakumari. And when he was there, while he was on bullock cart, he realized the ground was parched and people were suffering. There was so much of dryness, and the monsoons had failed, and so much of suffering, so that he came up with this composition called Ananda Amrita Karshini. Ananda Amrita Karshini, Amrita Varshini, Haradi Pujite Shive Bhavani. So again, it's a composition in praise of goddess Bhavani. It's in Sanskrit. It's in this raga called Amrita Varshini, which produced a torrential downpour of rain, and he is remembered for having created this composition, and literally for having created this raga. And I'm just going to sing this to you and give a demonstration of this raga, and after which we will take a short break, both for questions and also for Ankurji to talk about the course. So the raga goes sa ga ma pa ni sa ta ni ma pa ma ga Ananda Amrita Karshini Amrita Varshini Haradi Pujite Shive Bhavani Ananda Amrita Shri Nandanadi Rakshini Shri Guru Guha Janani Shri Nandanadi Rakshini Shri Guru Guha Janani Chidrupini Sananda Hridayanilaye Sadaye Satya Sufrishti Hetave Tvam Santatam Chintaye Amriteshwari Salilam Varshaya 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 Sa Ga ma pa ni sa ni pa ma ma ga ga sa ni pa ni sa ni sa ga ma pa ma ga sa ga ma pa ni sa ga sa ni pa ma ma ga sa ni pa ma ga Ananda Okay, so I'm going to stop here briefly now and take any questions you have, and also, yeah, Ankurji.
Great, great. That was wonderful. So let me drop in the chat. Here is the link. So the course is Hindu Musical Traditions, a Cultural Immersion. What is this, Kacheri? This is your third or fourth course you're teaching at HUA now?
This is the second time around that
Second.
we are offering this sequence.
This sequence.
Yeah, this is a sequence of, so this is a 2-quarter sequence. The first quarter, we will, it's a cultural immersion which includes an introduction as well as the theoretical framework, which includes ragas and talas and more. And during the second term, we will take a we will take a dive into the history of evolution of Hindu music traditions. And you will not see this approach to history elsewhere, because this looks at it exclusively from an Indian, with this is a very Indo-centric, Bharatiya-centric framework in the context of everything else that's happening elsewhere in other musical systems. And also looking at the continuity of reference in many different parts of India as to how the whole system evolved over a period of time. That's quarter 2. But in the first quarter, it's going to be a deep dive. There'll be listening assignments, listening exercises. We will learn the Shastriya Sangeet vocabulary in the correct way. We'll learn how to use it, and then we'll learn to understand a number of terms, and also even explore a few compositions in detail, and cover the diverse musical traditions in India, like Drupad and the Carnatic music tradition, as well as the Hindustani music tradition, as well as other forms of classical traditions that exist in India.
Wonderful. So that first quarter, the first in the sequence, starts January 18th. It's going to be every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and it'll go until 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. So it's an hour and a half. every week on Tuesday, where Kacheri is going to go through this with you. You'll be on our Hindu University of America learning platform, the learning management system. You'll log in, the Zoom link. You'll have a meeting setting where you'll be able to interact with other folks in the class and listen and ask your questions. And I think it'll be, if you have taken a course at HUA, you know the feeling, and I think you appreciate it, and that's why you're back. If you haven't, this would be a great first course to take, especially if you got that interest in music. And we're going to have a $100 discount. So if you sign up between, I think we'll start it tonight and Tuesday morning, sometime we'll do that follow-up email if you register. And it'll be a $200 course that you can enroll in and have this immersion for a whole quarter. I think it's going to be amazing. Kacheri, if you want to take some specific questions, I'm not seeing too many. Let me see.
I see a bunch of comments. I'm going to address them one by one. Yes, the first composition the Kriti that I sang, it's in a raga called Chittaranjani, correct? And thank you, Prakash, for mentioning that. And the second question is Sushil Patel. Are there ragas or equivalents in Western classical music? So we don't have a concept of raga in Western music. The whole approach to the art music world in the Western music tradition is different. And I will just very, very briefly show you a couple of short video clips and then use those as a framework for explaining what the differences are. Then other questions are, is Indian classical dance going to be introduced as well as in the course? No, we will not be getting into the dance aspect of it. It's pretty much going to focus on music, but we will talk about, or maybe even get into a few musical compositions that are used in the dance tradition. Yes. Given that I'm based in Europe, is it possible to follow the course because of my time zone? It's very late at night. We can talk about that later. We'll respond to you separately on that as to how we can deal with it. Prakash, again, what are your views on T.M. Krishna with respect to spirituality and Carnatic music? So, okay, T.M. Krishna is a great singer, and he's in a way, he's created a lot of innovation, and his approach to music, his approach to philosophy itself, and his approach to life itself is, it's his approach. I look at music from the standpoint that, like I mentioned up front, I subscribe to that shloka that I mentioned up front, that Veena Vadana Tattvajnaha, Shruti Jati Visharadaha, Talagyaha Cha Aprayasena Moksha Margam Niyaschati. And so I believe in the Shastriya Sangeet, the way I learned it is as it is rooted in the Dharmic tradition. And this counters examples throughout the evolution of music history that point to that. So those are the aspects that we'll be focusing on. And towards the end of the course, we can definitely, we'll take up other points of view for discussion as to what those mean and what are the implications of those, let's say, on the future of music and all that. Because every now and then there's breakaways in thinking patterns which literally tend to alter the course of what is going on. So, but this is not the only thing that is happening. A lot of other things are happening at this point in time. Young kids are getting initiated into classical music simply because festivals have taken root here in the United States and elsewhere, which promotes a spirit of competition, which is not necessarily the best thing in music. But if you look at the end product, if you look at thousands of kids getting trained in classical music, I think that's a very desirable state. It's nice that the heritage is actually transferred down to the next generation, at least through that means. So we'll take up those in detail as we go on. Carnatic or Hindustani focus, it's going to be focused on both. I believe in the concept of Raga Vidya. Let me repeat the phrase again. It's Raga Vidya or Raga Vidya. The knowledge of ragas. The knowledge of ragas is common to the northern and the southern traditions. I don't. So, like for instance, the three ragas that we looked at so far are the first one is unique to southern India. The second one, Mia Malhar, is unique to northern India. The third one is unique to southern India. There's many ragas which are common across traditions, and this much, in my view, in my worldview, there's much more in common between the northern and the southern musical traditions than there are differences. To me, the way is that there's a theoretical basis. There are some commonalities such as the Shruti, the Raga, the Tala, and if the whole concept of swaras and the spiritual core of the music traditions, which is common across regions in India. It's just that different regions have found different ways of expression. Like in the Carnatic music tradition, you have what are called the kritis, which are the compositional forms, whereas in Hindustani music, you have the whole idea of gharana music over the last 300 years, because that's the way it spread. Okay, so we will definitely be focusing on both of those as we go on. You don't have
I
to be
love
able...
that. The Raga Vidya. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. It's true. It's true knowledge. So let me just ask a quick question to our audience. Are you interested in enrolling in this course? Yes, no, maybe I have questions. Just answer either way so we can keep track of it and, you know, follow up accordingly. That last way that you answered it, this is why we need an academic course to get into it. And I'm glad that you're offering it with HUA and people can participate. It's not that expensive. There's a lot. This is going to be so much. And this is just part one of 2 courses. So please do consider enrolling. Just let us know, yes, no, maybe, if you're interested in enrolling. Thank you, Kacheri, for taking the questions. We have a few more, but if you do have questions, put them in the Q&A box and we'll go through them. And thank you for filling out this quick poll. Yeah, back to you.
Sure. And do you have to be able to sing to take the course? No, you don't have to. If you can appreciate it, that's good enough. Are you sure the swara for Anandamrita Karshani was original and composed by Dikshitar? It's a very good question. Shows that you have a certain awareness of what's going, deep awareness of details in the world of Carnatic music. This is the swara that was documented by Dikshitar's nephew in the year 1904 or something like that. Dikshitar passed away in the year 1835. His nephew was born in 1839. He learned music from Dikshitar's brother. And he documented the works of Dikshitar during his lifetime, especially in the last, let's say between 1895 and 1905. And this is what he published. So what I sang is exactly what is written down by the nephew of Dikshitar in the year 1904. Next is Amarjit. I'll be in India for the last 3 classes. What are my choices? I will answer this later.
Yeah, we'll follow up. Prageji, maybe we'll talk to you directly, and hopefully you'll be taking this course, Amarjit. So that's at the end of the Q&A box there. Did anybody drop anything? Shetalji, maybe that's a yes to taking the course, hopefully. Any last questions, or Connection, do you want to give another example? Anyone interested to authentic? Can you check out Lima Academy? Okay, we can include a little shout out to the Lima Academy, I guess. People take the course, health issues. Okay,
yeah, we will continue to offer this because my philosophy is that it is a shame for us from Bharat if we don't get an appreciation for the music tradition that we have. I mean, there are many people. Don't get me wrong on this. It's like, when it comes to sports, like if I played cricket, I would get bored in the first ball. Okay, but I'm deeply interested in music, so I do understand that not everybody is interested in everything. But music and the arts have been an integral part of just the evolution of the Indian way of thought. And I mean, they're all related. You cannot look at anything in isolation at all. So whether it's the Indian sciences, or whether it's Ayurveda, or whether it's yoga, or whether it's the Upanishads, or whether it's the Bhakti movement, or whether it's temple building, or the temple patronage of the arts, or the evolution of music theory, or anything like that, they're all astrology, astronomy, everything. They're all related. Okay, and so music is definitely a vital component, and I really, really wish that they had made basic music appreciation a part of our school syllabus. Like if you look at the way music is taught in the West, my kids had to go through, they either had to be part of a choir or an orchestra or a band, at least for a few years during the school years. And just imagine how our lives would have been different if we had gone through that. Because for most of us, the only window into the world of Indian music is through Bollywood. And Bollywood depends on who is in charge at a given point in time. At one point in time, we had masterpieces created by people like Vasant Desai, people like Naushad and Shankar Jayakishan, a lot of other people, Salil Chaudhary and all that. The Western sound which has come to take over the music of India is quite a lot. Of course, even in the middle of all that, you see a lot of genuine, beautiful creations that kind of embrace a lot of ideas together. But wouldn't it be nice if we all had this exposure? And now that we have an online way of getting connected and sharing this across, I think it'll be awesome if more and more people get this. Okay. Are there any efforts to perpetually codify Indian classical music through a website, or it's not lost for future generations? There is a lot of things that are there are a lot of things available, and we look at some of the resources in class, and we also need to learn to evaluate the resources because there's so much available right now. So as my brother refers to the WhatsApp university, you get so many forwards on a day-to-day basis. I do get calls from my friends saying, hey, Kanixji, what raga is this composition? And they send me stuff that's not, I mean, they genuinely love this composition, and it may not be based on a certain raga or anything like that. So usually what I do is I send them counter references and say, okay, please listen to this. And this is based on this raga or stuff like that, you know. So there is lots of resources available. We just need to figure out which ones to use. Okay, so I think I will continue with the rest of the presentation and share a couple of more vignettes before skip this one. So there's a lot of movies. So speaking of resources, there's a lot of movies based on classical music themes. In the Western world, you have Amadeus, which allows you to get a peek into the life of the composer. Here I'm going to use the word composer. It's Mozart. And there's another movie called Immortal Beloved, which shows the life of a composer, Beethoven. So Mozart and Beethoven are covered.
Are you sharing slides again? You want to jump into that and share screen?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And we have 35 people fill out the question. Are you interested in enrolling? Please, if you haven't filled it out, just fill it out before it makes it easy. There we go. We see your screen again. Thank you. Full screen. Perfect.
Yeah. So Amadeus and Immortal Beloved. The first one's about Mozart. The second one's about Beethoven. And there's a series of movies on Beethoven which have nothing to do with the composer. This has to do with the Saint Bernard dog, which is an adorable set of movies. It's worth watching them with your kids, but it has nothing to do with Beethoven as such. On the Indian front, these are must-watch movies. One is, the first one I would recommend is Hamsa Geete. It's there on YouTube. It's a Kannada movie, and it's a music. It's I think it was filmed on location in Chitradurga in Karnataka, and it deals with the early years of Hyder Ali or Tipu Sultan, or the traditional life of musicians during that period. And it's very beautifully made. It's worth watching, and the music is by Bala Murali Krishna. It's definitely worth every bit of your time. The second one is Shankarabharanam, which was released, I think, in 1979. It was a big craze during my college days. And then if you've not seen it, please do watch it also. Of course, Baiju Bawra. This is again a classic in Hindi, black and white film. And the fourth one, which you should definitely watch, is Jalsa Ghar. It is also available on YouTube. You can probably get better copies elsewhere. It's a film by Satyajit Ray. It deals with the hosting of music concerts and the changing lifestyles of zamindars and others during the waning years of the British period in Bengal. It's definitely a movie worth a watch. Another vignette I want to share with you is an older music tradition the Shiva Lingam that you see here is one of the largest in India. It's not from Bhojpur, but it's actually from a place called Tanjavur in southern India. And this is a man-made temple, which was built 1,000 years ago by one of India's greatest kings ever. His name is Raja Chola. And the temple, I believe, was consecrated like in 1010 or something like that. What he did during that time was he compiled the musical compositions that were written by a set of at least 3 Shaiva yogis or Shiva Bhaktas who had traveled from place to place, visiting ancient temples and creating musical compositions in their honor. All these are in the language Tamil, and they are all based on old ragas that time. So this Raja, this king, Raja, he created grants to compile all this music together and institute a formal mechanism of training a community of singers who are referred to as Oduvars, who would do nothing but learn this music and sing these in temples on a daily basis during pujas. And this tradition has been going on continuously for the last 1,000 years or so and more. We are already in 2021, so it's about 1,010 years now. That's what's been going on. We'll study about this as well. We'll look at 1 or 2 compositions in the first term, but actually we'll study about the history of this and the places they travel to and all that in the second term. Everybody knows what this is. This is the Kashi corridor. This is the golden roof of the Vishwanath temple in Kashi. When you look at the golden roof, you realize, so one thing that should come to your mind is that this particular structure, the golden roof structure, was the major construction that happened in 1776 or something, or sometime around that, when this temple was consecrated. So the next major change that's happening to this temple is after this many years in 2021. It's going to happen like in a week from today. Now, the reason I bring this up is that it was in the 1790s that Muthuswami Dikshitar, who was associated with the Raga Amrita Varshini, actually went to Banaras and spent 5 years of his life there. The impact of this stay is that you do find some Hindustani ragas in his repertoire, but more than anything else, all his compositions are in Sanskrit. As compared to other southern Indian composers, where you see a lot of Telugu compositions, most of his work 99% of his work has been in Sanskrit. And there's a strong connect between his music and the Dhrupad tradition of India, which also we'll be looking at. But more interestingly, Muthuswami Dikshit came in contact with the music of the East India Company, and he wrote lyrics in Sanskrit to Western tunes, and we'll be studying this as well. One example would be Santatam Pahimam Sangeetasyamale Sarvadhare Chintitartha Prade Chitrupi. So what is this? This is the tune of the British national anthem. And he actually transformed it into a prayer in Sanskrit. So this is something that we'll be looking at in detail. And here's a couple of YouTube clips that I wanted to share with you. So it's about, what are we looking at in terms of time? 5:50. So can we go on for another 5 minutes, Ankurji?
Definitely.
Okay. So what I wanted to share here was the fundamental differences between Indian and Western music. In Western music, the entire structure is, you're looking at harmony, functional harmony as it's called. For instance, this is the time when the Nutcracker happens. I don't know how prevalent it is now because of the pandemic, but I remember going back and watching the Nutcracker so many times. So when you look at the orchestra play, there's like literally 100 people on stage. You have violins in one section, and you have violins in another section. You have the violas, and you have the cello section, then the basses. All this constitute the strings. Then you have the woodwinds in terms of the flutes, the clarinet, the oboe, the bassoon, and so on. Then you have the trumpets. and the brasses, basically all the glistening brass instruments, and you have a whole set of percussion, then you have a harp and maybe a choir to go along with this, and then you have a person that's conducting this a written piece of material which has instructions on who's playing what at which point in time. We don't have anything like this at all in Indian music. All you have is typically you have one person performing. That is all you have. Um, but what holds Indian music together is the glide across an octave, which is very different from the discrete steps that you have in music in the Western idiom, plus also the heavy amount of improvisation that takes place in the world of Indian music. And of course, the concept of the raga, the tala, and the whole theoretical framework which is behind it. How are ragas to be sung? Is there a relationship between ragas and the time of the day? Is there a relationship between two different ragas? How are ragas related? What is a swara, or what is a pitch? And what is a shruti? Then what are groups of ragas, and what is a composition? We have a kriti in the southern Indian tradition. We have generally use the word bandish to refer to a composition. The Hindustani tradition, we have drupads, we have khayals, and so on. Then we have the different performing traditions. Then we have the different teaching traditions typically based on the Guru Sishya Parampara, and also literally the ownership of ragas within households known as the gharanas. And there's a tremendous amount of diversity and regional variations in music. But in general, what we say is that the music to this, if you imagine a line cutting through India, just where it's drawn in this map, south of that, you have Carnatic music, and in the rest of India, you have what's called Hindustani music. Hindustani music means nothing other than Indian music, right? So to expand upon this in detail, what constitutes Hindustani music? North of that line that I said, okay, we say Hindustani music, but it's actually a lot of components in there. One is the form of music that we take for granted when you hear a singer. They are singing in the khayal paradigm. Bhimsen Joshi, for example, Jasraj, for example, or Rashid Khan, or anyone, they sing khayal. Then you have Drupad, which is an older form of Hindustani music. Then you have Kathak, the dance music that goes with the Kathak dance. Then you have the dance music that goes with Odissi. Then you have the Haveli Sangeet of northwestern India. Then you have Thumri and the Natya Sangeet in Maharashtra, and the devotional music tradition, the whole bhajan kirtan tradition, which is also based on classical ideas. To the south of this line, you have what's called the Kacheri music, which is a music sung in concerts in the world of Carnatic music. Then you have the temple music, which you just talked about, music that goes with Bharatanatyam. Then you have music that goes with the Kathakali dance, and the repertoire is different in each of these. But again, they all come under the general basis of Carnatic music, and everything to the north of this line comes under the general idiom of Hindustani music. And what is common to the Hindustani and the Carnatic traditions is the idea of Rag Vidya, which is just nothing other than the knowledge of ragas. So what we will learn in this course is everything that we just talked about, the contrast between Indian and Western music, a deep dive into the terminology and the theory of the raga and the tala and the compositional forms, and also a brief introduction to history, which will be dealt with in detail in quarter 2. But then we will be touching upon, when we talk about the theory, we'll be touching upon each, or if not each, most of the systems that I mentioned here: Khayal, Drupad, then the bhajans and so on, and then the Kacheri music, which is in the Carnatic tradition, the temple music, and the theoretical framework behind each of these, and the construction of compositions, what a composition looks like on paper, what it looks like when you sing it, the concepts of improvisation, how do you improvise, how do you make music on the spot, and all kind of good stuff. So I'm going to pause here.
Okay. I like that overview at the end, getting a context, right? The trees from the forest, what is I mean, there's so much, obviously. So I'm glad that you were able to share that. Is there another question? How are you feeling? A closing thought? Is any previous musical knowledge, Indian and or Western, required? I don't think so, but an
No,
extreme and then maybe some closing thoughts.
no. I One thing I really encourage in all my classes is intense participation. So you need to participate, and then if you don't have prior knowledge, it's okay, and no question is considered too simple or anything like that. Any kind of question is welcome. So I would say it doesn't matter if you don't have any prior background, but if you do have a background, you do bring a perspective with you. I would be delighted to welcome your questions and encourage discussions as well. I'm seeing something from Matul Shah. Yeah, we will talk about the traditional ideas from the Puranas, like Narad Muni, Saraswati Devi, definitely Gandharva Veda and the other celestial beings, and the Nadi Yogis. Yeah, there's a lot more that we have, and I'm totally with you. And this course is rooted in the dharmic traditions, definitely. And see, just for example, when you look at the name Amrita Varshini, how much more can you be rooted in the dharmic traditions when you even talk about the word Amrita Varshini? This is right out there. So the word Amrita, we reference the Upanishads right away, and Varsha. We are talking about the Panchamahabhutas and the power of music to influence the elements themselves, and of course the tantric traditions. And okay, there's different stories about Tansen, which is fine. Shankarabharanam is a good movie, and of course, in Dikshitar is associated with Raga called Kumuda Kriya. Yes, I do have a few recordings of that out there. Then Notiswaram is a name given to such compositions. Yes, there's a total of 39 such compositions. It's because Indian classical music is very creative. I mean, I want to say that there's creativity in every musical form. And we will discuss these things in class. And finally, why no harmonizing in Indian music? We did not evolve in that direction at all. The focus was completely on melody. It did not even get in the direction of harmony. We simply don't have, of course, we do have the relationship between two notes, the sa and the pa, and that's pretty much it. We don't have, I think it could be due to, it's the way our choice of an Ishta Devata, a choice of a message, our method to connect to the source. Each person does it in their own way, right? So there's much more scope for improvisation and much more way for you to interpret the ragas once you have a certain level of mastery in them. And there's no one person calling the shots where you combine all of these together. So that's just the approach to the musical philosophy itself, which has caused this kind of an evolution in music. Of course, in this day and age, we do try to come up with some innovations, which, for instance, I have done. I've taken a few ragas in the Indian tradition and I've harmonized them, and I've had them performed with like a 150 member choir and like a 50-60 member orchestra and all that, with many different parts happening at the same time, ensuring that the rules of the raga are not violated. But these are more like innovations, and these are not part of the tradition. So are there any new ragas that are still being innovated? You could create any raga at any point in time, but whether it'll survive the test of time, nobody will know. And this is what one of the people that I look up to, he is a musician by name Bala Murli Krishna. And I always quote him. His thing is that innovation should never be suppressed. People should innovate. And whatever comes to life, if it is of good quality, it'll survive. Like, for instance, the movie Sound of Music is a classic. It's not necessarily part of the classical music repertoire, but it is something that survives the test of time. If you're able to create anything that survives the test of time, then it means it's a classic. So yes, there are ragas, and he himself came up with a couple of ragas, and we don't know how long their popularity will be around. I mean, he has created a few compositions in those which are very interesting, and yeah, it's like that. Can you give sheet music to performers, and can they perform a composition that they've not heard before? Yes, very much. And I see that all the time. We are not in India. We are not trained to look at music that way, because ours is an oral tradition. Everything is through the ear. But in the West, it's literally a biblical tradition. So you look at something, you read it, right? Like my daughter, but not everybody can read it in the first attempt. So it takes a certain ability to look at what you're at a sheet music, look at those dots and connect them to patterns in your head, and then sing it or play it. And some people are gifted with that, and they'll do it right away. Others will take a little bit of effort to do it, but they'll eventually do it if they're trained. So I hope that these answered all the questions that you had.
Great. Yeah, I think everyone got the questions answered. Let me drop in the chat. Please do consider enrolling in this course. Again, we have a $100 discount for the next couple of days. We'll send you a follow-up email. If your Tuesdays are open and you're interested in this, I think this is going to be an amazing course. The conversation just in this webinar was great. And again, I'm glad to be a part of this Connect Street. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And with that, if you have any closing thoughts, I'll give it off. Otherwise,
yeah, I'm going to say something. It's like this is a course where we will hopefully have some fun together. So it doesn't have to be all serious all the time, because there's a lot that people have already listened to. There's a lot more that you will listen to. There's a lot of questions you will come up with, and then there's a lot you can actually relate back to the part of India that you're from, or the part of the world that you live in, and so on and so forth. So the correlations, the connections that you can make are limitless. And I have a structure for the class, but then there's a lot of freedom around it as well. So the aim is to make it enjoyable and a fun experience, so that you get something out of it at the end of all of it. And that's basically the feedback that I've gotten during the past times that I've taught this class. And I taught a different version of it at the University of Cincinnati before, to a completely different audience. And there the approach was slightly different, but the overall structure of the course content was the same, because the idea was to give an introduction to Raga Vidya to people of non-Indian or trained musicians of non-Indian origin. And so it succeeded in doing what it had to. And it's a different approach here. So, and I hope I will be able to see most of you like in a few weeks. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me, kanniks@gmail.com, KANNIKS@gmail.com. I'm happy to answer anytime.
Dhanyawad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you.